Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Jessica. Today we're talking about batting. So this is the third installment of our week learning about materials and supplies needed for quilting. I'll be walking you through making this quilt behind me called the Nona Quilt. This is a quilt that I designed specifically for the first time quilter and anyone else who'd like to join in. It's simple enough to be the first quilt you ever make, and this week we've been going over the things needed. On the first day we talked about the overview in general of this week plus sewing machines. On the second day we talked about fabric, and here I'm back for the third day and we're talking about batting. Now, quilt batting is the layer of material between the top, which has all the blocks on it, and the backing. I don't have the binding on this quilt finished, but you can see here, which is a good thing because it's not finished, you can see here the layers. So I have underneath this part is my top that has my blocks that I sewed together. This is my backing. And you can see that in between these layers is a layer of batting, and it provides the insulation that keeps you warm when you use a quilt. There are lots of different types of batting. I always think the best thing to do with something new when there's a variety is to experiment. Try a bunch of different types, see what you like the best. Eventually you're gonna hone in on like the top couple that you always rotate back and forth between depending on what you need. But today I wanted to go over the different types of batting so you at least know your available options. The types of batting that we're going to be talking about today are cotton, polyester, wool, silk, and bamboo. I have some batting samples here that I cut from battings that I have, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to see on screen, but if you go to a store, you can get these at like Joann Fabrics or your quilt shops. They'll have them. You can actually like feel these and touch them and kind of see the differences. So let's start with 100% cotton. 100% cotton is a great option for batting. It's a very common one. You can find it widely available. It's made from 100% natural fibers because it's made from all cotton. It's breathable, it's soft, it has good texture to it. Cotton batting often comes in bleached, which is like all white, and also a natural color. So I have here, let me see, I have two different cottons here. You can a little bit see the difference here. This is a bleached cotton. This is Warm and White by the Warm Company. I love this cotton one and I use it all the time. I have about maybe 4 or 5 battings that I rotate between depending on what I need. I love this one. It's fantastic. Then this is another one that I use all the time. This is Warm 100 by the Warm Company. It's another 100% cotton batting, and I just love it. They also make one, I don't have a piece of it, but they also make one that's going to look similar to this. It just feels a little bit different, and the mechanism for making it is a little different. It's instead of Warm and White, it's called Warm and Natural, and it's going to look more like this natural color instead of this bleached white cotton. That's a fantastic one too. I love that. So I've always had really good luck with the Warm Company batting. I use it probably on like 95% of my quilts. Cotton batting does shrink. It will say on the package how much it shrinks. It's somewhere between 3 and 5%, which is, you know, hard to figure out when you have a whole big quilt. But what happens is when it shrinks, after you make the quilt, if you wash it, it will shrink the whole quilt and the quilt will kind of have like a crinkled look to it, which from a lot of quilters' perspective, that's like a really desirable thing. It makes it look cozy and comfy. Other quilters who are maybe entering their quilt into like a show, you don't want that shrinkage to show because you don't want it to be ripply. You want it to be completely flat. So if you want to use a cotton batting, you want to prevent that wrinkled effect, you're going to need to pre-wash your batting and all of your fabrics because cotton fabrics, 100%, they shrink. So when I quilt, I like that crinkled look. So I don't pre-wash my fabrics and I don't pre-wash my batting. So then when it comes out of the dryer, it's just like a beautiful texture. But if you don't want that, you're going to need to pre-wash the fabrics and the batting. And on the packages of batting, it will tell you what you need to do to pre-wash it. One thing to note about cotton, the difference between bleached and natural. Occasionally in natural, you're gonna find cotton seeds. Now, I've made hundreds of quilts, and I maybe have only found 2 cotton seeds ever. But they're gonna look like kind of like a little sesame seed, but dark. And if you do find any of those, you want to pick them out with your fingers and remove them from the batting before you quilt your quilt, because the seed will kind of like darken everything around it, and it can come through onto your quilt top and your quilt back and stain it, and you won't be able to get that stain out. So you just, a heads up, if you're using like a natural cotton, you need to just look over it with your eyes before you actually sew it into your quilt, and just make sure there aren't any seeds. That being said, cotton is a fantastic option, and it's one I use all the time. Another option is polyester. Polyester batting is the cheapest batting that you can use. It's the most cost effective for sure. It's said that it's a good choice for people with allergies because it is hypoallergenic and it resists mold and mildew. Polyester batting has a lot of like good attributes, but sometimes people don't want to use it because it's not a natural fiber. But the good stuff about polyester is that it's very light. And so if you had a cotton batting and a polyester batting that were the same size, you cut them out, the polyester batting will be a lot lighter than the cotton batting, but you're still going to get a ton of warmth from it. So if you're looking for a quilt that's really light and like fluffy, polyester batting is a great option. So I have a sample here of, this is 100% polyester batting, and you can see even the difference. Let me pull up my cotton. You can see the difference here of how like light and fluffy this looks compared to the cotton. And if I turn it on the side, you can see it's just got like layers of fluff. So this is very, very light and warm too. People like using this in baby quilts, again, because it's hypoallergenic and it's not heavy. Now, another thing that kind of combines the best of both worlds is cotton and polyester is a combo, a cotton poly batting. So there are different ratios of cotton poly battings. The most common are 80% cotton, 20% polyester, and then 60% cotton, 40% polyester. So you can find those. This is an example of one, and you can see here that it does closely resemble the cotton, but it's not as heavy. I can tell by the feel of these that this is quite a bit lighter. Even though this is an 80-20, so it's 80% cotton, 20% polyester, it's still a noticeable difference lighter. So this kind of makes the best of both worlds. You get that like wonderful cotton with the natural fibers and its beautiful breathability, but you also get the benefits of the polyester being in there. It's lighter, it resists mold and mildew. It's just a really good option. And so these are usually, the blends are usually more affordable than a full cotton. So polyester would be the cheapest, a cotton poly blend is next, and then a cotton's after that. So far, they're all really, really great options, and you just need to decide kind of like what works best for you. Next, let's talk about wool. Wool batting is lovely. It is fluffy and warm. When I'm looking at these two samples, this is my wool batting and this is my polyester, they kind of resemble each other, right? They are both light and fluffy. They are composed of layers. So you can see here, this is wool. This is composed of layers, just like my poly was. So this is the poly. So these remind me of each other. They really do, with the difference being wool is 100% natural fiber. So the wool is beautiful to work with. It quilts really nice by machine and by hand. On a machine, when this is quilted, the stitches will hold down some parts of it and the rest kind of like stays puffy. So you have like beautiful stitch definition. On hand quilting, you can get through these layers so easily with a needle. It's like sewing through butter. It's so soft and beautiful. The other fantastic thing about wool is that it resists creases. So if you have a quilt, fold it up for a while, whether you have to mail it or just in your closet, fold it up. When you take it out, you won't have any creases. Like, it unfolds beautifully and it just like bounces back. One potential drawback is it's expensive. Wool batting is one of the more expensive battings. The other thing is some wools you have to look, you have to check. Some of them are not machine washable and dryable, so you have to check. A lot of like the newer, more modern ones are. They have made it so it's like a super wash wool and you can wash it and dry it easily. A while back, that wasn't the option. Wool batting had to be hand washed and air dried. The other thing just to note is it is wool, so when you get it wet, it does smell like wool. It smells like a sheep. But when it is 100% dry, there is no smell to it at all. So if you have it in your washer and you take it out and you're like, oh, this smells like a sheep. If you dry it, or even if you dry it in your dryer, or even if you hang dry it, when it is fully dry, there is no smell at all. So you might think, what did I do here? Why does this quilt is going to smell horrible? But once it's dry, there is no odor at all. Like, this smells like nothing. It's perfect. So that's just one thing to note. Another thing that people sometimes talk about with wool batting is they say that it beards. So all batting to some degree will beard. And bearding is when the batting kind of like comes through the quilt top. Like, it'll find the little spaces in this woven cotton texture. And now, I mean, all cotton's woven. This is more of like a very tight weave, but still it will find those little areas and kind of come through. And if you look at it sideways, you can kind of see it coming out of the front of the quilt. So that's something you might hear with, well, wool beards. Well, it does, but it's fine. I mean, it just depends on, I guess, what you're going to use the quilt as. So if you're just using it as a decoration, like on a wall quilt or something, and you're never going to actually like wash it and use it, it'll be fine. If you are going to wash it and use it a lot, it can still happen, but I don't feel against it in any way just because that might happen. If it does come through, you can just use like a lint shaver and just shave it off. I actually really like wool batting. I don't use it all the time just because it is expensive, but I do use it, and I've had really great results with it. The next type we'll talk about is bamboo. Bamboo is just a wonderful batting. So a lot of times you can find blends, cotton bamboo blends. I have a cotton bamboo blend here. This is a 50% bamboo, 50% cotton. The 100% bamboo is my favorite. It's a little more difficult to find, probably because it's expensive. Bamboo batting is expensive. But bamboo batting is just, it has the most like delicate drape, and the hand to it is just so beautiful. You have to feel it to know. But it's lightweight, it's breathable, it resists mold and mildew just like poly does, but it's bamboo. It is just so beautiful. So with a cotton batting, to get your quilt to like drape nicely, it's gonna need to be used a lot. So like used, washed, and eventually it'll be like the most fantastic drape, and just like it covers you beautifully. It like molds to you, you know, like it's not stiff. But in the beginning, cotton is stiff like that. You just have to use it to get it softer. Bamboo is, as soon as the first time, it's like just draping wonderful. It will fit beautifully. Like the quilt will just drape around your body. Whatever you have it on, it will just be so nice. The only drawback to bamboo is the price. So it's a very expensive batting, but it is fantastic. So I'd recommend you just try it on like 1 or 2 quilts that you are really in love with and you know will be, you know, with you forever. Try it on those because you're gonna love it. The other batting I have here is silk batting. Now, silk batting is also very expensive. Silk batting often comes in a blend. So the blend that I have here is 90% silk, 10% polyester. And it feels really light and delicate, like a wool kind of, but even more delicate. It's lightweight and it has beautiful drape. Oftentimes something like a silk batting is used in like a quilt coat or some kind of coat that has a batting in it that's going to be against your body. Even though it's very lightweight, it is warm. Most silk battings, they won't shrink unless they're blended with cotton. If they're blended with cotton, then they will shrink because the cotton shrinks. Silk battings, they do need to be washed by hand and then air dried. They can't go into your machine. So that is something you need to consider. It's probably not one that you're going to use all the time. The care for the silk batting, again, just like any other batting, is going to be on the package. So you'll want to follow it carefully. All right, I have one more to show you. It's not a separate blend. It's just a different kind. So they do make black batting. And this is an 80-20 blend of black batting. And black batting is recommended when you have quilt tops that are bright colors. So not a ton of white, but like really bright colors. When it sits underneath the colors, it's supposed to make your colors more vibrant. So there is an option for this. If you are making a quilt with like very vibrant colors, this is an option because it's supposed to really help those colors shine and be beautiful. Whereas opposed to like a bleached white, you're going to want to use that when you have a lot of whites or even like pastel-y colors because it will help those colors shine. So black batting is an option. You might not use it all the time, but it's definitely something to consider if you're making a quilt with vibrant colors and not a lot of white. There are a couple other things to talk about with batting, and you know, they come into play a lot with cotton batting, but I just wanted to mention it in general because they are used in other batting. So there's something called Scrim. Scrim is like a web of non-woven fibers or like a lightweight type of glue that will hold the batting together. It can be on one side or both. And what it does is that when they put it on, the idea is it's going to help hold the batting together so that you can space your quilting lines further apart. Your package will say if your batting has scrim or not. Scrim is usually made of polypropylene or something of the like. And it fuses right to the batting. So you can't like separate it. There's nothing for me to separate with my hands here. It's completely fused to it. To me, I'm sure to a trained eye, they could see it. To me, I can't tell the difference. Now this one, I would have thought this batting had scrim just by the way it looks, but it specifically says no scrim. So you can't always tell by looking at the batting if it has it or not. Sometimes you can, but you can't always tell. So you need to read the package. And a scrim's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's put in place because it helps your batting, like I said, stay together so that you can quilt it further apart. And even then, it helps so that once it's in the quilt and it's being used, the batting doesn't like migrate and separate. It holds it together. So it is a good thing, especially in quilts that are going to be heavily used. One thing to note, like I said, most scrims are made of like a polypropylene. They often say with scrim, it makes it harder to hand quilt. So if you're going to be hand quilting something, you might want to look for a batting without scrim because sometimes they say it's difficult, more difficult for you, harder work for you to get your needle through a batting with scrim on it. Except one exception, Warm 100 by the Warm Company. This is a batting I showed you in the cottons. This is the only batting, first of its time, to have an all cotton scrim. So this one, they say that because it's 100% cotton scrim, you can hand quilt on this without any difficulty. I have hand quilted on these and it's beautiful. So that's another reason why I love this Warm 100 batting. Another thing to mention about batting is there is a right side and a wrong side. So this isn't always evident. So I think like look at the batting as best as you can and determine if you can see if there's a right side and a wrong side. And if you can't tell the difference by looking at it, then just use it however you like. But technically, the reason they say this is because you might be able to see it on this batting. This one on the package says no scrim, needle punched. So what needle punching is, and a lot of battings have this, is they have a machine with all these needles that punch through the batting. And what that does is it kind of makes it easier for you later. Like this one would be great for hand quilting because it's got no scrim and it's needle punched. It makes it easier for you to get through the batting. So the side that the needles enter on is your right side, and the side that the needles come out is your wrong side. So the right side will have little dimples on it, and the wrong side will have little bumps. So the right side, the side with the dimples, needs to be facing your quilt top, and the bumps on the back need to be facing your backing. That's technically the right way to put it in. But if you look at your batting and you can't tell dimples, bumps, you can't tell the difference, then you can just use it however you do. That's what I do. But if I can noticeably see indentations and then bumps on one side, I'll always make sure that the bumps are on the back side of the quilt. The last thing I just wanted to mention is that always refer to the package, okay? So some packages have like an abundance of information on them, and some don't have much. So refer to the package. This is going to tell you how to care for it. If you're looking for a pre-wash, it'll have information on pre-washing. If you want to know how far apart you can space your quilting lines, it will tell you that. And just follow those recommendations, because each type of batting and each manufacturer is a little bit different. So you want to make sure, you know, you're following what the package says. You can't just say, well, I use this one batting and it was 8 to 10 inches apart on my quilting lines, and then apply that to another one. That doesn't work, because that other one might say 4 to 5 inches apart on your quilting line. So you just need to always check your package. If there is not information on your package for you, I like to go to the manufacturer's website. So I'll look up whatever batting that I'm using, and I will go to their website and type it in, and then just see. They should have all the recommendations there for spacing on your quilting, for care, pre-washing information, just anything about the batting. They should have lots of information for you. If you can't find any information about the batting, I personally wouldn't use it. I would find one that has a ton of information, so you know that you're doing everything that you can to preserve the batting as best as you can. And I think that's it. So I'll put some of my favorite battings in the description below, and you can also reference the blog post on We All Sew that will have all of this information typed out so you can read it at your leisure. If you have any questions on batting, just leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer. And I will see you back here for tomorrow for the next installment talk about materials. Thank you for following along.